Welcome. Have you ever said to a preacher, I just don't know enough? Preachers hear that with some regularity. Maybe you felt that way about your faith, that you're not educated enough or well versed enough to lead a class, to say a prayer, to hold a position, to teach church school, to lead the youth. But the problem with that kind of thinking is that it sees knowledge as a destination, as a goal, a place to reach, something to accomplish. But knowledge is never a destination. It is always a tool. It's a tool we can use in our faith to get closer to God, that we can use to explore spiritual practices that will deepen and enhance our faith, as a tool to help us understand God's will and discover where is God in a world where there is so much tragedy happening all around us. Knowledge is a tool in every field. Thank goodness for scientists and epidemiologists who use their knowledge about medicine and science to create a vaccine for COVID-19 in record time. The goal wasn't their knowledge. The goal was to develop things that will enhance life for so many people. Musicians and artists use their knowledge of music and color and art and composition in order to communicate something that words are inadequate to express alone. Those who study languages gain the knowledge of multiple languages so that we can communicate across barriers that would have kept us from communicating. Friends, religious knowledge is not the goal. The goal is a strong, solid faith. That's where we're aiming. That's what we try to be on the road to. Welcome, I'm Rick Blunt from Okemos Community Church. I'm glad you're with us for this message on April 18th. As we continue to look at the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus, today looking at the road to Emmaus story that comes to us from the 24th chapter of Luke. And so I'm here on a path, on a road. The cover to the video on YouTube will have a famous painting of Jesus on the road to Emmaus. Actually, the roads around Jerusalem would not have been tree-covered paths, but would have been more desert-like. But how appropriate it is that the artist draws Jesus walking in his area, in his community. And so I am here on the grounds of our condo association on a well-traveled path. You might see some people come and go as I'm filming today. If you know the story, I'm going to read it in just a few minutes. It's the story of two people walking along the path on Easter afternoon, the day of the resurrection, and they're heading out of Jerusalem on their way to Emmaus, a town about 6 or 7 miles away. What's interesting is Emmaus hasn't survived into our time, so we don't really know where Emmaus is. There's several shrines that are erected in places where it might likely have been. But I think it's interesting that Jesus appears on the road to a nowhere kind of place. Hear how Luke begins the story. That same day, that's Easter Day, the resurrection has happened in the morning. That same day, two of them were walking to the village of Emmaus, about 7 miles out of Jerusalem. They were deep in conversation, going over all the things that had happened. In the middle of their talk and questions, Jesus came up and walked along with them. But they were not able to recognize who he was. He asked, "What's this you're discussing so intently as you walk along?" Now, how about that? Jesus walks along, maybe behind them, and hears their conversation and joins in. What would that be like for you? If Jesus heard you discussing the current events that are happening in the world, they're really talking about church and state. They're talking about the religious leaders of their time and the government of their time. Conversations that sometimes we might be embarrassed to have Jesus over here. Well, that's another sermon for another time. I'm just going to drop that over here, but some of you might have needed to hear that today. But they weren't able to recognize the person that they were talking about. It's intriguing. The story goes on. They just stood there, long-faced, like they had lost their best friend. Then one of them, his name was Cleopas, said, "Are you the only one in all of Jerusalem who hasn't heard what's happened during the last few days?" He said, "Well, what has happened?" They said, "The things that happened to Jesus of the Nazarene. He was a man of God, a prophet, dynamic in work and deed, blessed by both God and all people. Then our high priests and leaders betrayed him, got him sentenced to death, and crucified him. And we had our hopes that he was the one to deliver Israel. It is now the 3rd day since it happened, but now some of our women have completely confused us. Early this morning, they were at the tomb and couldn't find his body. They came back with a story that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of our friends went off to the tomb to check and found it empty, just as the women said. But they didn't see Jesus. He said to them, "So thick-headed, so slow-hearted. Why can't you simply believe all that the prophets said? Don't you see that these things had to happen, that the Messiah had to suffer and only then enter into his glory?" He started at the beginning with the books of Moses and went on through all the prophets, pointing out everything in Scripture that referred to him. Jesus is here giving them knowledge, giving them information, and giving them explanations. But it's not enough. Ours is a faith where knowledge alone is never enough. Knowledge alone is never enough. That's not to say that knowledge isn't important and helpful. It is a great tool, but knowledge alone is not enough. Because we can know about God. We can know all about Jesus without knowing him. without knowing God. There are scholars and philosophers who know all about religion, but don't know Jesus, who don't know God. You see, knowledge is not the goal. It never has been. It never will be. It never is. It's a tool to get you down the road a ways. Even when they got the knowledge, they still didn't recognize Jesus. They were unable to perceive his presence with them, beside them, among them. As the story goes on, I want you now to listen for two important things. One, they have to invite Jesus in, to invite Jesus to stay. And two, listen for how it is that he becomes known or recognized to him. It's not through their knowledge, it's through relationship, through a sense of community, through taking action, through a shared meal. They came to the edge of the village where they were headed. That's Emmaus. Jesus acted as if he were going on, but they pressed him. Stay and have supper with us. It's nearly evening. The day is done. So he went in with them. And here is what happened. He sat down at table with them. At that moment, he sat down at table with them, and then taking the bread, he blessed and broke it and gave it to them. At that moment, open-eyed, wide-eyed, they recognized him. And then he disappeared. Knowledge should always lead to action, to doing something, to sharing fellowship, to forming relationships. Knowledge is not the goal, but it is a tool, and knowledge is never enough. Knowledge gets us down the road to wherever it is we're headed, but it's not our destination. So, Pastor, great Bible lesson, but how does that apply to today's world? Well, I would ask you, where is Christ unrecognized in your world, in my world, in our world? Would it be in black men and black boys who are killed during arrests? Would it be with children without parents on the border of our country? Would Jesus be in and with the unemployed and the underemployed and the struggling business owners in our community, but actually all around the world? Could we see the Christ in Asian Americans who now live in fear of being attacked? Could we see Christ in parents and students and teachers and administrators that are struggling with how to educate through this pandemic and worried that they're not doing enough or teaching enough or accomplishing enough? Would we see the Christ in families of over 3 million people that have lost their lives during this pandemic? More than the city of Chicago. Jesus was recognized in the breaking of the bread, symbolizing the suffering. Jesus is recognized in the suffering of the world where people are broken. And communion, the very word means community, coming together and recognizing our oneness and sitting at table as family members together. It's why we practice the open table, because we understand that it's at the table that someone might be converted. They might have that awakening of where Jesus is in their world and in their lives. Jesus told us, whenever we care for the least of these, we have done it unto him. In this story, Jesus is visiting the unknown and the unnamed. We know Cleopas, but who else was there? These were people who knew about Jesus, who had hopes and dreams about what Jesus would accomplish, and they were let down like the disciples. It didn't end like they wanted. They had knowledge, but it wasn't enough. But here, they invited him in. Come and stay with us. And when they did, in the breaking of the bread, they recognized him. Him who had been with them for a while. I wonder where Christ is already traveling with you and me, and we've not recognized him. I wonder if you're ready to make a difference. They invited him in, and he recognized them. Hear the end of the story. Back and forth they talked. Didn't we feel on fire as he conversed with us on the road, as he opened the scriptures for us? They didn't waste a minute. They were up and on their way back to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and their friends gathered together, talking away. It's really happened. The Master has raised up. Simon saw him. Then the two went over everything that happened on the road and how they recognized him when he broke the bread. While they were saying all this, Jesus appeared to them and said, "Peace be with you." Friends, you know enough. You know enough about God and Jesus. You can or already have invited him into your life, into your heart. But do you recognize him in our midst today? He is here in the poor and the unfortunate, in the hurting and the hungry, with those who mourn, with those who cry for mercy, with those who strive for justice. Christ is here. He's with the imprisoned. Do we see him, recognize him? And are we ready to use that knowledge to make a difference in the world? Pray with me. Gracious and holy God, you have given us knowledge and wisdom. Now give us courage. Help us to invite you into our lives and open our hearts and minds that we recognize where you are in the world today, so that we can make a difference, so that we can bring your love, your joy, your peace, your justice. Help us to be healing agents, and remind us that we who are unnamed and we who live in remote places in the world, they're where you still visit. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this helpful in your faith walk. If so, if you would hit the like button, if you would make a comment or share it on your social media or send an email to someone, that would be grateful. Friends, I want to speak to the current conditions. I anticipate it's going to be a difficult week in the life of our country, as we have had another mass killing, as the trial for George Floyd enters deliberation. And we anticipate there will be upheaval no matter what the verdict, as we struggle with 2 more young men killed, 2 young black men killed, as we deal with the news of over 3 million people losing their lives to COVID in the past year and a couple months. We're called to prayer. We're also called to action. You know enough. We know enough. Enough to speak up, enough to speak out, enough to stand for justice, enough to advocate for mercy and to seek peace and healing. God is here. I invite you to open your eyes to see where God is in the midst of all the brokenness of the world around us. Remind you, we have virtual fellowship at 11:30 today. The children have a Sunday Fun Day activity via Zoom at 2 o'clock. You'll watch information about Earth Day. Look on the Monday message. I'll update you on all the progress happening in the sanctuary and in the kitchen. Things are really moving along. The wall coverings are going up in the sanctuary. They're about ready to start tiling there. So thank you for following along, and we'll keep you updated. Go forth, friends, and live with the peace of Christ, and know He is where you least expect them, at your table. And sometimes you don't recognize Him. Look for Christ this week. Go in peace.